promote human rights.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Department of Justice releases over 3.5 million pages of documented Epstein files, including redacted, unredacted names following demands from lawmakers. The White House has updated its fact sheet on the historic US-India trade deal, removing mentions of tariff reductions on certain pulses and softening language on India's purchase commitments. Mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge in British Columbia leaves 10 people dead, including the suspect, with over 25 injured in attacks at a high school and a nearby home. Police found 6 victims inside Tumbler Ridge, a secondary school. US President Donald Trump escalates tension with Iran, threatening aggressive actions if Tehran doesn't meet US demands on nuclear and missile issues. In a recent interview, Trump stated that without a deal, the US would have to do something very tough amid ongoing talks mediated by Oman. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reaches the US for his 7th meeting with President Trump since the start of his second term, focusing on escalating tension with Iran. The emergency discussions come amid US-Iran negotiation. France reels from revelations in a massive pedophilia case involving Jacques Labougle linked to the abuse of 89 minors, including 2 murders. Alphabet has sold a historic 100-year bond as part of a $32 billion debt raise in multiple currencies to fund its massive AI investment. The century bond priced at 6.125% in sterling saw overwhelming demand. Blackstone has boosted its stake in AI firm Anthropic to about $1 billion, investing an additional $200 million at a $350 billion valuation in the startup's latest funding round. The FBI has released photos captured from a camera at Nancy Guthrie's Arizona house. That's breaking news developments coming in viewers. The photos show a person in a zip-up jacket wearing a backpack, face mask and dark gloves. FBI Director Kash Patel has said that over the last 8 days, the FBI and PIMA County Sheriff's Department have been working closely with FBI's private sector partners to continue to recover any images or video footage from Nancy Guthrie's home that may have been lost, corrupted or inaccessible due to a variety of factors, including the removal of recording devices. Patel has added that the video was recovered from residual data located in back-end systems. Patel has also said that working with FBI's partners as the law enforcement has uncovered these previously inaccessible new images showing an armed individual appearing to have tampered with the camera at Nancy Guthrie's front door the morning of her disappearance. The FBI has offered a $50,000 reward for information in the case. And we now move on to the tragic news coming in from Canada this morning. The Prime Minister Mark Carney has spoken with US President Donald Trump to resolve tensions over the Gordie Howe Bridge, a major infrastructure project connecting Windsor, Ontario to Detroit, Michigan. Trump has threatened to block the bridge, demanding the US own half of it, claiming Canada controls too much. Carney clarified that the ownership is shared between the state of Michigan and the Canadian government. The $4.7 billion bridge under construction since 2018 is expected to open this year, symbolizing Canada-US unity. Despite Trump's claims about Canadian-China relations and trade, Carney assured that the situation would be resolved. Let's listen to what White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had to say.
I think the president was very clear and direct in his truth, John, but just to reiterate, the fact that Canada will control what crosses the Gordie Howe Bridge and owns the land on both sides is unacceptable to the president. It's also unacceptable that more of this bridge isn't being built with more American-made materials, even more so than what President Barack Obama committed to with the Canadians at the time, at the start of the project. He also believes that the U.S. should own at least half of the bridge, have shared authority over what passes across it, and participate in the economic benefits generated by its use. This is just another example of President Trump putting America's interests first, and so he made that very clear in his call with Prime Minister Carney earlier today.
Professor Rohan Gunratna, international affairs expert from Singapore, joins us in this conversation. Professor, Trump now wants to own half of the bridge. This is, of course, coming after his threats to Canada. Do you really see progress being stalled in this regard?
There will be progress for two reasons. One is President Trump is now reviewing the previous record, that is in February 2017, during Trump's first term. In fact, he issued a statement with the then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying that given our shared focus on infrastructure investments, we will encourage opportunities for companies in both countries to create jobs through those investments. In particular, we look forward to the expeditious completion of that international bridge, which will serve as a vital economic link between our two countries. So I believe that Trump's aides, his assistants, will now brief him so that he will be able to go back to the previous record. The second is, of course, it is so important for Prime Minister Carney and for Trump to have a very close relationship, because Canada and the US are very close to each other and they need to work together. There can always be misunderstandings between leaders, but if that can be, the friendship can be strengthened, I believe that both these countries and both these leaders will work together so that there will be prosperity and cordiality and not conflict between these two countries.
All right. Professor, stay on with us. Let's move ahead to have another round of discussion now. Viewers, we have some news now coming in from Israel, where hundreds of protesters gathered outside Australia's Parliament House in Canberra on Wednesday to demonstrate against the visit of Israeli President Isaac Herzog. The protests sparked by Herzog's trip have been seen across Australia, with clashes between police and demonstrators in Sydney earlier this week. Protesters have called for condemnation of Israeli government actions in Gaza and the West Bank. Despite tension, Australian leaders urged that protests remain peaceful. Earlier in the day, Herzog received a ceremonial welcome at Government House, where he met with Governor General Sam Mostyn and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Let's listen in to the protesters.
I think it's even less appropriate for him to come here because it's demonstrating his link between the Israeli government and the Australian government. And I think we should be condemning the Israeli government for all that it's done in Gaza and the West Bank.
And I feel very strongly, as to my family, that Israel's representative should not be here.
All right, Professor Rohan Gunratna requested to join us back in this discussion. Now, even if we are giving this news, protesters are planning more protests in Australia. So clearly they're not stepping back. How is Israel really going to view the protests against its regime in Australia?
In this day and age, protests are there everywhere. Certainly the number of protesters are very small, it's minute, it is insignificant compared to the population of Australia. It is only a few thousand protesters that have gathered at these protest venues, and I think that it is so important for the Israeli president not to focus on those protests, because Australia is a liberal democracy. Certainly, the Israeli response after the brutal Hamas attack on in 2023, October 7th, 2023, was overwhelming. But at the same time, the intention was to dismantle Hamas, and whether anyone likes it or not, Hamas will be dismantled. Not only Hamas, but the 9 other groups that participated with Hamas to conduct killings, maimings, injuries, raping, and hostage takings in Israel. So the Australians are aware of this. Government to government, the relationship will continue between the vast majority of the people of Australia and Israel. The relationship is excellent. This is a very small group of people who have been radicalized, who do not understand the importance of governments responding to terrorist attacks that are protesting. Certainly there were excesses. The Israeli response was overwhelming. There were civilian deaths. But I personally believe that President Herzog himself was not responsible for those civilian deaths, and he came to Australia after a very brutal attack by ISIS, or the Islamic State. It was a family-based attack by father and son, and that is because of what you call family radicalization. That is, a segment of the Muslim community in Australia has been radicalized, and this the Australian government has to address, prevent extremist preachers, hate preachers from preaching in Australia. Those hate preachers should be locked up, and they should not be allowed to step into Australia. And if there are any operating in Australia, government of Australia should give them long-term prison sentences.
Well, the protesters are calling for sanctions on Israel. Do you think the government is going to relent to popular pressure?
Certainly government will not, because it's not a real popular pressure. It's a few thousand protesters, and Australia and Israel has had a very long friendship and cooperation. Israel is doing very well economically, and I think that even if the Australians want to sanction Israel, Israel will boom, because Israel has build a very close friendship with many other countries, especially with the United States. The U.S. President, U.S. Secretary of War has called Israel a model ally. And I think that the Australian protests is a part of the Australian culture of permitting dissent, and those protests will continue.
All right, Professor, do stay on with me as we now move on, viewers. Let's tell you some details as far as the Ukraine war is concerned. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that air defense repairs are underway after Russian attacks targeted Kyiv's power infrastructure, triggering electricity and heating shortages. Zelensky said emergency crews are working to restore services as temperatures drop and damage assessments continue. Officials say the strikes forced temporary outages across parts of the capital, affecting homes and essential services. Ukraine has again called on allies to speed up delivery of air defense systems, warning that energy infrastructure remains a key target. Russia has not commented on the latest strikes. The situation in Kyiv remains under close watch. In fact, some more breaking news now coming in.
Сьогодні була тривала розмова з військовими, головнокомандувач, керівник Генштабу, міністр оборони України. Багато змін відбувається зараз в роботі протиповітряної оборони в окремих регіонах. Фактично повністю перебудовується те, як працюють команди. Перехоплювачі, мобільні вогневі групи, весь компонент малої.
And we move on, viewers, to some more details coming up. Ukraine has also begun planning presidential election alongside a referendum on any peace deal with Russia, amid intensifying pressure from the Trump administration to hold both votes by May 15. Ukrainian and Western officials say Washington has warned Kyiv it could lose proposed US security guarantees if the deadline is missed, as the White House pushes to wrap up peace talks by early summer. Zelensky is expected to announce the plan on February 24, which is the anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion. The move marks a major shift for a leader who has long said elections are impossible under martial law, with millions displaced and parts of the country occupied. Officials stress the timeline remains uncertain depending on progress toward a peace deal with Moscow, including contentious issues such as territory and security guarantees. Critics warn rushing a vote during active warfare could undermine democratic legitimacy, while supporters say a referendum could give any peace deal public mandate, a critical moment for Ukraine's future. Professor Rohan Gunratna is there with us. Viewers, even though US is pushing, Zelensky may be thinking that he may lose the US securities, but how prepared is the country for a free, fair election?
Priti, the US guarantees is contingent on Zelensky holding the elections soon. And I personally believe that there is no option for Ukraine, for Kiev to do that. Because if they don't do that, Trump will take away those security guarantees that is vital for Ukraine. The second point is equally important. That is, the main contentious issue is that the region of Donbass, the Americans want there to be territorial concessions in order for there to be peace between these two countries. And of course, the final point is that this is the war in Ukraine is not really a war between Russia and Ukraine. It is a problem between Russia and Europe because the NATO started to build up their forces on the European side of the Russian border. So there must be an agreement that will reflect that Europeans will not do that, because if they do that again, the Russians will invade another country in Europe. So for there to be a comprehensive peace deal, there must be a comprehensive understanding of what led to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And that will require significant discussion. Of course, having elections is important because that will give legitimacy to the peace deal that Ukraine is going to have with Russia.
All right, Professor, thanks very much for joining me in this discussion then. And we now move on. Viewers, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has confirmed 773 measles cases in the United States, out of which 727 cases were reported across 20 jurisdictions, including Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia, and others, while 6 cases of measles were reported among international visitors to the US. CDS has reported 2 new outbreaks in 2026 with 92% confirmed cases which are associated with the outbreak. Padma Shri Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, chairman at the Nephron Clinic, joins me in this discussion from New Delhi. Doctor, thanks very much for joining us. Firstly, what are your first reactions to the measles outbreak there in the US? And most of those infected were foreign nationals. So how likely is it that the disease is also widespread in other nations?
Good morning. So I think this is a worrying sign. It's a sign that we all need to take note globally because of the international travel and the nature of the virus. So the nature of the virus is it's one of the most contagious, perhaps the most contagious virus which is known to mankind. We've gone through COVID, and the COVID R0 was ranging between 2 and 4 and 6. Measles as a virus, which is a paramyxovirus, it's an RNA virus, has a R0, that means reproductive rate, that means the rate and the speed of transmissibility and replication of the virus is 18 plus. That means it's 3 to 4 times more dangerous than even the first and the second wave, alpha and the delta wave of COVID. So of course we need to be very, very careful. The concern really is there are large pockets of the world, including in US, which are still unvaccinated for measles. And the present trend in US of the aid being cut to the vaccination campaigns and the Kennedy family proclaiming the anti-vax campaign, going gaga over it, I think may hurt the US nationals, because this is rampantly going to spread in an unvaccinated population.
There are several people who are actually opposed to vaccinations. Many are also saying that a lot of cases of cardiac arrest that are now surfacing in youth are also linked to the vaccines. How would you want to convince those people to taking these vaccines, given that measles is, of course, highly contagious?
So just focusing on the measles vaccine, more than 5 million deaths are prevented every year because of the measles vaccine. In the year 2000, we had more than 6 lakh kids dying because of measles, and now in the last 20 years, because of huge vaccination campaigns all over the world, the rate is down to less than 50,000. So I think the vaccine gives you an efficacy of more than 85 to 90%. It is entirely safe. In the unvaccinated population who get measles, unfortunately, there is a great risk of what we call as measles encephalitis or meningitis. That's the brain inflammation, pneumonias, ear infections, decreased immunity, and so on and so forth. Typically, it leaves a lot of rashes on the skin, high-grade fever, infection in the eyes, even permanent blindness. So I see no reason why measles vaccine should be stopped under any circumstances. It has no side effect practically in the range of what is being described. It has no link to autism. It has no link to neurological disorders. It has no link to pregnancy loss. It is entirely safe, and I strongly advise the entire globe that they must insist on measles vaccination, likewise other essential vaccines.
Right. Dr. Bagai, now Canada has also recently lost its measles-free status, and that's again due to lack of vaccinations and misinformation. How can this misinformation really be tackled? Because awareness is key to increasing the number of people getting vaccinated.
Yeah, so I think here comes the role which it should play is of the WHO and the CDC and the national health ministries of the different countries. And I think we need to spread public awareness. We need to lay out the statistics. We need to lay out the long-term damage to a child's multi-organs after they get infected with measles in an unvaccinated population, and to tell them that it is safe. It has no mercury, it has no aluminium, it has no autism link, it has no neurological or neuroregressive link. This virus spreads very quickly and is very invasive. Once it enters into the respiratory tract, within 2 to 3 days, it spreads all over the body. It has a long incubation period ranging from 15 to 20 days, but your first phase, which is of rash, fever, red eyes, sore eyes, and general malaise, fatigue, body ache, can be for 7 to 10 days. The rash typically begins in the face and it spreads downwards, what we call as cephalocaudal distribution. The high-grade fever often is very worrying, especially for smaller children and infants. It is something which is preventable. I see no reason at all for the life of me that the vaccines should ever be prevented or stopped. The measles vaccine is extremely important.
Doctor, one final question before I let you go. Now, WHO is saying that making measles eliminate globally is now a distant vision. And this was the statement that it had said in November last year, and then in January, the US formally withdrew from the World Health Organization. Only CDS is there that the country is probably relying on. How can the message really be fostered in the United States now with Trump's hardline policies, him exiting global bodies, including the WHO, and given the fact that the cases are now on a rise in the US itself?
Unfortunately, we are living in a world where common sense is becoming rare and artificial intelligence is being relied upon, pun intended. But here is the fact that the individual countries must take responsibility. The WHO must play its role in whatever limited way it can because of financial constraints, if at all they are, and CDC must play a role. This is not rocket science. Measles vaccine is an extremely cost effective. It costs less than 100 rupees, Indian rupees, per shot. It is one dose at the age of 8 to 9 months, and then a booster with MMR at the age of 14 months, and then subsequently an MMR2 in the range of 2 to 4 years. It gives you lifelong protection. It is safe. It has no side effects. It has practically, it's so innocuous that you don't even know that the vaccine has been given. It is so easily procurable. It's not running in short supply. Once it spreads, especially in clusters, like in schools or in playgrounds or in creches, in parks, it can go rampant in a community within a period of a week. Within 1 year, we can get back into control with measles, provided there is an international campaign spreading the message, public awareness, and quietening down the people who are anti-vax kings, telling them that this is utter nonsense what they're spreading.
Right, Dr. Bagai, thanks very much for giving us your time
Thank
here
you.
at NewsX World. And now moving on, viewers, to some tech news. China's ByteDance is reportedly developing its own artificial intelligence chip and is in talks with Samsung Electronics to manufacture it as the TikTok parent moves to secure supplies of advanced processors. Sources say ByteDance aims to receive sample chips by the end of March and plans to produce at least 100,000 units this year, with production potentially ramping up to 350,000. The chip is designed for AI inference tasks. Negotiations with Samsung are set to include access to memory chips, which are in tight supply amid a global AI infrastructure build-out. Samsung declined to comment, while ByteDance said reports about the project were inaccurate without providing details. The project, codenamed Seed Chip, is part of ByteDance's broader AI push, which includes large language models and cloud services. The company plans to spend more than 160 billion yuan on AI-related procurement this year. The move comes as Chinese tech firms rush to develop in-house chips driven by US export restrictions and heavy reliance on NVIDIA for advanced AI processors. And with that, we wrap up this edition of the World Report on NewsX World. Stay tuned.